All right, why don't we get started? So welcome to the Dashboard Dojo. Today we're going to talk about spring cleaning. So it's that time of year in my part of the world. It's time to do some spring cleaning. We're going to focus on decluttering the report and dashboard tabs. I'm going to share my own story of cleaning up Opfocus's report and dashboard tabs. We have a 14-year-old instance, and we had thousands of reports when I started. My name is David Karns, so glad you could join us. So today we'll do quick introductions, and then we'll dive into the work at hand. I'll be demoing sometimes. Please use the chat if you've got questions along the way. We'll try to answer as many as we can. We'll talk a little bit about some upcoming events. I can't wait to the first in-person event in a while. Northeast Dreamin' is coming up in the Providence area. There's also Texas Dreamin' and then Trailhead DX coming up. I'll talk about the upcoming Dojo topics. We'll take Q&A along the way, but we'll also leave some time at the end. We've got a lot to cover today. So glad you could join us. So my name is David Karns. I'm the Chairman and Chief Evangelist of Opfocus. So we are a consulting firm. We've been working in the Salesforce space since 2006. We work with SaaS companies to optimize their revenue operations. I've been honored to be part of the Salesforce MVP program. This is the second year. And I actually just had a really cool text this morning from somebody that I first met 40 years ago. So I'm dating myself here, but so he shared these two photos. You can see me with my hat sort of on an angle, and I can tell this was my old Andover soccer shirt. I grew up in Andover, Mass. This is from a tiny island off the coast of New Hampshire, but I thought it was pretty cool that this old buddy of mine texted me this photo this morning. So again, Opfocus, we work with companies, SaaS companies across the US and Canada. We're a team of about 70 now. I've got our events manager, Kyle Shagnon, helping out today. Thank you so much, Kyle.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so if you haven't been to the dojo before, welcome. I spent 3 years in Japan, really loved the experience, got to visit a whole bunch of dojos, different parts of Japan, and just love this idea of people of all different ages and all different skill levels learning together. So this is where the idea of the dojo came from. We do have lots of recordings. So if you go to dashboarddojo.com, go to the recordings tab, there's a tag cloud of different topics, and we've got 25 or 30 hours of recordings now since we've had the dojo running for about 1.5 years. All right, so cleaning up the dashboards tab and the reports tab, my gosh, we've got a lot to talk about. The first thing I want to talk about is backing everything up. Please, 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 before attempting this, back stuff up. We'll talk about how to get organized. We'll talk about using, in my case, I used a Google Sheet. So a Google workbook with multiple sheets and a sheet for reports, sheet for dashboards, and so on. We'll talk about just socializing this. You want to make sure that you let people know about the work you're going to do. And then there's the actual work of cleaning this up. So this is a slog. It's slower than you realize. And you sort of have this, wow, the 80-20 rule sort of makes a lot of sense here. Like you're just not going to stamp out all of the old stuff, all of the unused stuff, but you can make a lot of progress. Just over here on the screenshot on the right, I'll just share from my own org. So we've got a 14-year-old Salesforce instance. So when we started this process, we had 2,245 reports. We had 119 report folders. I just did a little analysis on the exports that I did. 1,146 of those reports, so just over 50%, hadn't been run in 2 years. So there was a lot of stuff that was sort of easy to clean up. The same was true with dashboards, and this was interesting that, you know, we had 79 dashboards, and quite a high percentage of them were related to App Exchange apps. So you install DocuSign, you get an App Exchange app. You install the the badge monitoring app, and you get 4 dashboards, and so on. So we had 34 dashboard folders. We were using all 5 of our dynamic dashboards. You get 5 in Enterprise Edition. There's a bunch of things you could tell just from these exports, and it was sort of interesting to see this is what our starting set was. So if you're at a larger company, you might have 10,000 reports. You could have 1,000 dashboards. You have a bigger work ahead of you. This still took a big chunk of time to work through, but I think getting organized was really helpful, allowed me to communicate with department heads and other folks. So, what the sequence of events that worked well for us was to remove old AppExchange apps first, because that uninstalled dashboards, dashboard folders, reports, report folders. And then I went through all the dashboards, and then I removed dashboard folders, and then I went through reports, and then I went through report folders, and then looked at custom report types. We have 127 in the Opfocus system, so it's an old instance. Custom report types have been around for more than a decade. And then we'll just talk about some of the results. So there's a lot we're going to talk through here. All right, so backing everything up. And actually, you know what, before we move on, Kyle, we have a poll. Let's throw the poll out there. I'm really curious. So we've got quite a good number in the dojo today. Have you guys tried this before? So Kyle, if you can launch that first poll, be very interested to see what people say. So did you do it? Did you finish? Did you run out of gas? Did you get about half done? Are you bracing yourself for doing it the first time? So a few people finished. Congratulations. That's pretty awesome. Be interested to hear what best practices you have. Maybe you can throw those in the chat for those of you that actually made it through cleaning it up. Awesome. So let's, if you want to show the results, Kyle. So it looks like we got 10% finished and 46% haven't done it yet. So glad you're with us today. So let's close out the polls. All right. So, this first things first, like you really ought to do yourself a favor and back stuff up. So if you do not have a proper backup tool, you can use a sandbox. So if you just have one of your admins create a dev sandbox for you, or refresh a sandbox, basically that has all of your reports, report types, dashboards, and folders. All of that is metadata stored in the sandbox. So you could use a change set potentially to restore. Now that, if you're not a sysadmin, that might feel more complicated. At Opfocus, we use a tool called spanning. We have a backup of our entire system. Own backup is another very popular tool for backing up your system. I had something that I didn't mean to delete, one of the dashboards, and it was super, super fast to restore it using one of these proper backup tools. So if you have one of those, just sort of nice to know how to use it and how to have somebody restore something just in case. So please back up. Now, another consideration when you're doing this is that stuff gets thrown into the recycle bin. So there's two concepts when deleting records and also reports and dashboards, that there's sort of a soft delete and things go into the recycle bin. Now that has an impact because if you delete 10 reports in a folder and it goes in the recycle bin, you can't delete the folder yet. You actually have to go purge that stuff from the recycle bin. So all users can see the stuff and hard delete the stuff that they've deleted that's in the recycle bin. Admins can wipe out all of it if they need to. So within Lightning, there is a tab for recycle bin. You can go up to the waffle up in the top left corner in Salesforce, go to the recycle bin, and you can show that. And I'll show a little bit more about that in a few slides. The key to all this, the reason for backing everything up is you want to be able to restore stuff quickly. I did that twice during this process. Once for a dashboard using this our spanning backup tool. Our head of ops was able to restore it immediately, and then I promptly deleted it again because I realized that was something we wanted to delete. And then I actually made a mistake using the mass delete tool, the mass delete reports tool, and I was able to use the recycle bin to do a restore of those soft deleted items. All right, so that's the first topic. Please back stuff up. And just a little bit more about the recycle bin. So when you export a list of reports, let's say using the data loader, you can see there is a column and you can see items that are deleted. So false, false, these ones that are false, they're not deleted. Those are actually available and could be used on the reports tab. Whereas this one that's true is not visible on the reports tab. it's still floating around in our system. It's deleted. It's essentially soft deleted. So again, the recycle bin is tab and lightning. Deleted reports and dashboards go there for 15 days. Don't count on the 15 days. If somebody deletes a lot of other stuff, it'll push older stuff out of the recycle bin. So what you can do with the recycle bin is you can actually go to the recycle bin. So here's a screenshot at the bottom where I had just deleted 3 dashboards, and I checked the boxes there and then clicked the delete button, and that essentially hard deleted it. Those 3 were probably in the same folder, and I couldn't delete the folder until I hard deleted those dashboards. So the recycle bin was helpful with that. All right. All right, so this process really benefits from getting organized. And what I found really helpful is to create a worksheet. And I use Google Sheets. You could use an Excel workbook. The benefit of Google Sheets is just being able to share it, right? Just to share what you're working on. So I created a summary tab, and you can see that in the screenshot on the right. And then I had tabs for reports, dashboards, folders, custom report types. I started thinking that components, dashboard components would be useful. I didn't care about them at all. I also thought that users might be useful. If I ever needed one, I could just take the ID and go up into Salesforce and figure out who it was. But originally I thought I'd have another tab for users and actually just do a quick VLOOKUP and populate all the users with human names. I wasn't so bothered by that. I preferred using the data loader to export all of the reports, all of the dashboards, and all of the folders. That was very quick and easy for me. I'm actually curious, maybe we could run the next poll. How many of you have actually ever used the data loader? So it's a tool that's provided by Salesforce for sysadmins, and you can access basically everything in your system, including reports, dashboards, and folders. Okay, we see some folks that prefer dataloader.io. That came to Salesforce through the MuleSoft acquisition, and that's a tool that a lot of people like really love. I think I've just never bothered with it, but people really love it, and I respect that. Okay, great. So it looks like 71% of you have used this. So again, if you're an admin in your system, you can take advantage of it. Now, Mitch, I don't, I just saw something yesterday that made me think. Mitch just made a comment that he prefers IO, except that there's a cost. I just saw something yesterday that it seemed like they had offered unlimited. So I haven't checked recently. In the olden days, it was kind of hobbled and you had to pay to use more. I just haven't checked recently. So maybe that's still true based on what Mitch is saying. So Emily says she prefers Validity's demand tools, which is a total rock star tool. Fantastic tool. So this is the cheap and cheerful free stuff. There's also a tool called Workbench. And I think Kyle can drop the Workbench link. This is a browser-based tool, which I'll mention in a little bit. It's very powerful, another way to export your list of reports, dashboards, folders. So for custom report types, there was no way that I could see to export through the API the list of custom report types. So what I did was just go to the custom report types page, copy, paste, and put it into my spreadsheet. So let me show you this in action. So, if you're not familiar with the data loader, if you log into the data loader, it's just a simple app. You click on export. It looks like I was loading deletes here earlier, but if you go into export and you choose your object like reports, you can come select reports and then walk through the couple of steps to just export all of that stuff. So what does that export look like? That export looks like this. So this is an export of dashboards, and there's a bunch of columns that are not useful. Like these 3 are from Classic, that there was diagonal colors, a fade of colors. These couple here are from Lightning, and then you've got created by stuff and so on. So what I did is just literally didn't do anything with this in Excel. I just copied and pasted it into my spreadsheet. So let's take a quick look at the getting organized spreadsheet. So this is the spreadsheet I just created for the Dojo. And I have a summary tab, and I just wrote some simple formulas that just count things. And what are the things that they're counting? Well, I have a tab for dashboards, for example. And if we go look at that, This is sort of in progress, mid-flight. Things that I'm sure I'm going to keep for dashboards, I mark in green. Things that I think might be questionable or I move to an old report archive folder, I mark in yellow. Stuff I'm absolutely deleting, or if I've already deleted, I just mark in red. But you can see the columns here. What I'll often do is freeze the top, freeze the header row. It makes it easier. I usually use kind of conditional, not conditional, I use coloring to highlight key things. Another trick that I like is to add a column that uses a hyperlink formula. And you can see here that I can actually link to each of these items. So it makes it very quick from, it's like a command console, and I could just go quickly check what is this dashboard. So I've got links here, and I used a hyperlink formula. You can see here, it's just hyperlink equals, and then I essentially concatenated the URL for my Salesforce instance plus the ID of that dashboard and combined it with the name of that dashboard, and I'm able to create these links over here. So basically, I've got one of these tabs for every single one of the things that I want to clean up. For the folders, something to point out is that folders in Salesforce are all stored in one object, and that includes email folders, document folders, insight folders. So I basically got rid of the ones that weren't dashboards and weren't reports. So this is how I got started, and I just created these counts here so we could see what we're starting with in this particular org. All right, so the other thing with getting organized is just to tell people that this cleanup is coming. I prefer to do the exports first because you want to lock in the last run date of all these reports. So export stuff to Excel first, preserve the last run date, because if you tell people it's coming and they go look at stuff, then that overwrites the last run dates. And I deleted over 1,000 reports based on last run date. I really wanted to preserve those original last run dates. Oh, I didn't share one other thing here, which is the, where are they? The report types. So with report types in particular, there was no way to export the list, but if you come under Setup, Feature Settings, Analytics, Reports and Dashboards, Report Types, I created a view that included the, where's my view? Huh. Looks like oh, here it is over here. I included the API name for the report types, and that was helpful to me later. You want to be really careful cleaning up report types. In the Opfocus system, we had 127 of them. This org looks like we've got 20 or so. You want to be really careful deleting these, because if you delete them, it deletes all the reports that use them, and then that breaks any dashboards that use them. So I was able to use this column here of the API name, and I'll show you that a little bit later of how I could take advantage of that. But what I did was just updated or created a list view and then copied and pasted this whole block into that last tab in this sheet here for custom report types. And this column ends up being very, very useful, the API name column. All right, so just to show you a little bit more of exporting. So this is with the data loader. Now, if you don't have access to the data loader because you're not a sysadmin, you still could go another route. There's just less information. So you can create a report on reports within Salesforce, no problem. There's just less information. Some of these columns aren't useful, but I did highlight ones in red, like format, ID, is deleted, that you don't see if you create a report on reports. This is why I prefer to use the data loader to create that export. And again, you want to do this before looking at the reports because you don't want to overwrite the last run date. All right, so the top screenshot is using the data loader. The bottom screenshot is just an example of report on reports. You can see here 2,244. Now, the same was true with Excel, exporting the list to Excel, that you can can create a report on dashboards, you have to create a custom report type first, but there's less information. The big one that's helpful with dashboards is deleted if you use the data loader export or dataloader.io or Workbench, whatever like more sophisticated export tool that you use will give you more information such as is deleted. The other list that I brought into Excel, so folders, I use the data loader, and then custom report types. As I mentioned, I use the list view that I created, and I manually copied those over. So the next thing in the process, I created a hidden archive folder for reports and a hidden archive folder for dashboards. And just to show you how easy this is, you know, I was really like, I took a machete to my system and I was like, whack, 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 just get rid of this, get rid of that. When really there were cases where I just wasn't sure. I'm a little too, you know, I'm a little too like machete ready to, I just want to whack stuff out of my system and get rid of it. But in reality, there's stuff, if you're not sure, why not just put it in an archive folder and keep it for later? You can create a hidden folder. So I'll just show you this in the system. You know, if we go to the dashboard tab, for example, I don't have an old dashboard archive yet. So as an admin, or if you have the manage public reports permission on your profile, you can create a new folder. Very, very easy to create a hidden folder. So it's literally old dashboard archive. And just click save. That is now a hidden folder. The way you can tell is you can come back in here. It deposits you in the folder when you create the folder. So I can come back in here and click share. And I can see that this is not shared with anyone. And then let's say I want to share this with Laura because she's helping me with this process. I can let her into it. I can also let roles and subordinates, public groups, like anybody that might need a final say. So I click share and now she has access to this hidden folder. So I do the same thing for both reports and for dashboards. And anything that's sort of like you're not sure, you feel like it should go, it's sort of like a halfway station. 6 months later, you might feel absolutely I can get rid of this, but it's sort of a halfway stop. So the next big step in the process is to remove old AppExchange apps. I wholeheartedly suggest doing this before touching dashboards and touching reports and folders, because when you remove an old AppExchange app, it's deleting all the dashboards, the dashboard folders, the reports, and the report folders. It's very, very simple to remove old AppExchange apps. If you go into setup, under apps, installed packages, you can see the uninstall links here. When you look in your sheet, some clues to what reports and dashboards are part of a package is this column called namespace prefix. So any partners that have created something and uploaded it to the AppExchange, they have a namespace prefix. Developers also will use these. But you know, like you can see here in just this list that there's Vidyard, there's Conga, there's some other ones, Gong. This last one in the list is DocuSign. They're not always named correctly with the developer name, but the namespace prefix usually gives you a clue. And this was part of, I think we had 23 dashboards in the Opfocus system that were tied to AppExchange apps. And I think 13 of them were tied to unused AppExchange apps. So that was really the first cut at cleaning up the system, was just uninstalling stuff. So then we get to the process of actually deleting dashboards. There is no mass delete option that I know of. I did try with the data loader. I tried just poking around in the system. I didn't find a mass delete capability. So what I did was I went one by one. You know, I looked at the intel in the export files. I looked at the dashboards themselves. I sent lists to department heads and owners of dashboards asking for input, even creators of dashboards. Ones that were just so old, and we had some really funny ones. There was one in our system that hadn't been refreshed in 3,000 days. You know, I just immediately deleted them. And then any that were in the suspect, I moved to that old dashboard archive folder. We did have an instance where there was an AppExchange app that was so old that it wouldn't uninstall cleanly. And you can use the Workbench to delete a single dashboard. And that gave us an option when we couldn't delete it through the user interface, we could take the ID of that dashboard and delete it using that tool called Workbench. So you can delete one at a time, and that works with reports as well. So that sort of saved our bacon. So again, back in my spreadsheet, on this tab, I used colors to just clearly demark ones that we're absolutely keeping, ones that are sort of question, or I have a question, like I'm pending an answer from somebody. I put in yellow, and the ones in red were absolute deletes. But I basically would, rummage around through these columns. When was it created? Is there a description? Is there a developer name? What information I could tell to determine what to delete. I actually went through, we only had 79 in our system, so I went through them pretty much one by one and cleaned stuff up. So I mentioned that you can't mass delete with the data loader or the Workbench. So literally this is the delete screen in the data loader, and the dashboard object doesn't even show up in the list. So you can delete dashboard component feeds, dashboard feeds, but not dashboards. So this is why we had to do the one-on-one, one by one. With the Workbench, I mentioned you can delete one dashboard at a time, not mass delete, and all you need is the ID of that. So if I literally came back in here and there was one that I needed to delete, I could just grab this ID from the ID column, go to Workbench. It's, what is it? Workbench.develop. Kyle, you put it into the chat. I forget what the URL is, but go to the Workbench, log in, go to the data column, choose delete, and I can paste in that ID here. Now, I did get an error. It says it does not seem like this record can be deleted. Are you sure? And it still worked. So I don't know why the error appears. It always does. After you delete, you can see over here on the right, I've got a screenshot of if you try to reload that dashboard, it's gone. And you can see it in the recycle bin and hard delete it if you need to. All right, so some clues that dashboards aren't in use. If it's in a folder that's not shared with anyone, that's a good clue that it's not being used. If the running user has long since left the company, this is what it looks like over here. If you see errors in red within components on the dashboard, these are all screenshots I took while cleaning up the Opfocus system. Unable to run the source report because its definition is, what does it say, invalid. I mean, there's just all kinds of little clues that this isn't a dashboard that's being used currently. There might be no data. So you can see here in the screenshot, just no data, multiple components, just didn't have any data. I think the object was either not used anymore or what. Another clue could be that the dashboards are actually classic dashboards. And there are a couple of ways to tell that a dashboard is still a classic dashboard. It could be ancient. Either the components are all the same size, or if the components are oddly spread out, that may be a clue that it was a classic dashboard. A couple more clues that, the people who created the dashboard is long gone. They were created years and years ago. The last refreshed, when you look at a dashboard, it's very helpful to see this last refresh. We had one that was almost 3,000 days old. We even had a dashboard that had no components on it. Got rid of that one pretty quick. So I did track my progress, as I mentioned, within that Google Sheet using colors. This is actual screenshot from our system. I use reds for deletes, yellows for questions, and pinks things that I was throwing into the archive. I don't know why I picked those colors. I just did. And just to show you, the manual delete of dashboards, if we go into the system and just go to the dashboard tab, and I've got a folder here called useless dashboards. I found myself with dashboards doing a lot within the folders and just quickly running through. So could be the folder name gave me a clue. Could be the sharing of that folder gave me a clue. There are a couple different ways you can delete. You can go manually over here on the right and choose delete here. You can also go to the dashboard itself and delete the dashboard like this. Now, those, as I mentioned, will show up in the recycle bin. So just to show you that, I guess I have to spell recycle bin. Here it is here. So these two items are already in the recycle bin. If I want to delete the folder, I'm going to have to actually hard delete the dashboard. So I can check the boxes, click the hard delete, and I'd need to do it for those other two that are still in that folder. So I'd go one by one, delete, delete, delete. It's actually sort of a thrilling feeling to be deleting stuff that's not used in your system. All right, so the next phase of all this was deleting reports. We do have a mass delete capability for deleting ancient reports. I used a tool that I'll show you in 1 second called mass delete. And there is this little hidden unknown capability that you can mass delete reports. I used the last run date and said anything that hadn't been run in 730 days, which is over 1,000 reports, whoosh. And then after that, I went one by one on the reports tab, and I had my export file that I was organized. I looked at the intel. I was really just gunning through. It was kind of thrilling to just get rid of so much stuff. So I'd look at folders, I'd look at the intel on my organized sheet. Sometimes I'd send lists out to department heads. And then anything that was kind of questionable, I wasn't sure, I'd move into that old report archive. So that mass delete really saved my bacon because there were over 1,000 reports that it would just have taken forever. So under setup, data, mass delete records, there is the ability to mass delete reports. I did a very simple last run less than 730 days ago. When people use these relative date values, I always caution them to be very careful and to start with equals and not equals. When you use greater thans and less thans, like I actually made a mistake and I deleted 250 reports. And then I thankfully had the recycle bin. I went back and restored all 250. You can do 250 at a time using this tool. And I just realized that I had made it greater than instead of less than, which is, it's just confusing the less thans or greater thans with date, dynamic date ranges like this. But in this tool, literally you run your filter, you check the boxes, you click delete, and you can do 250 at a time. Now, of the 1,000 that I deleted, there were some that couldn't be deleted for certain reasons. They were part of dashboards. They were part of App Exchange apps. There were no error message. It just didn't delete them. So this is one gotcha with the mass delete capability. All right, so some clues that reports aren't in use. If it's in a folder not shared with anyone, that public reports folder. So in Classic, it was known as the unfiled public reports. I've always thought of it as the report cesspool in your system. You can see here in the Opfocus system, we had 627 items in the public reports folder. I think there's like less than 200 now. There were just so many ancient ones. You can see here in the screenshots, 2013, one deals by account. So that 9-year-old report just whoosh, it's able to, to get rid of. Some other clues, if the report's never been run. So you can see here, we do all this great work as admins, we create reports, but there are times that people just don't use them. So I think for this to actually happen, can you save it? You can save it without running it. That's odd. Where this happened, up until a few years ago, when a dashboard was refreshed, it did not update the last run date on the report. Now it does. As of the last, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 years, that was fixed. Maybe 3 years, it was fixed. So in the olden days, reports that supported dashboards, this may never have been populated. So we had reports not run in years. We had reports created by people years and years ago. So Christy asked the question, if a report is being used in a dashboard, will the report show as run? Yes. Yes. So Christy, the answer is yes. And Salesforce quietly fixed that 3 or 4 years ago. So that was not true for years. And then suddenly they fixed it. It was true. A couple of other things, dates that are hard coded in the report names or the report filters. You can see this one here, 2013 Q2 targets, bye, getting rid of that. Another clue is that the data might have ended a long time ago. So this was some marketing report that we had, and we just stopped populating this custom object and back in 2015, it looks like. So the data ended a long time ago. Another good clue that I could get rid of that report. There are some things that prevent report deletes. If it's used in an analytic snapshot, that's that screenshot on the top right. If it's referenced by a dashboard component, these are all things that I just bumped into when I was trying to delete reports. If it's part of a managed package, you won't be able to delete it either. So let's go try out some ways to delete reports. So let's do a mass delete first, since I mentioned it. So if we go under setup and we go under data, and we go to mass delete records, there is this choice here. This happened earlier in, there it is. Okay, good. And you see the bottom choice here, you'd never notice it if we didn't talk about it occasionally, but there is the mass delete reports link under the mass delete records. And what you do is you just, identify a folder, some field, a report name, or something within the report names. You want to be a little careful, but what I thought was helpful in my case was I went to the reports tab, and I have two folders, one called useless reports and another one called more useless old reports. And, to mass delete, what you could do is just copy the folder name. And you do have some choices. So what I did when I did ours, I used the last run, and anything that was less than 730 days, whoosh, I got rid of. But you can also use the folder name. So just to show that example here, I can come in here, search for them. It'll show me those 3 reports, and I can come in here and delete them. Whoosh, they're gone. They're now in the recycle bin. So of course I just navigated away from the recycle bin, but just to show you that they actually go to the recycle bin, we can see those 3 from the useless folder in here now. So I can also manually delete them. I have another folder called useless reports, and I found myself, I did over 1,000 using the mass delete, and then I found myself manually deleting, just sort of gleefully going through, delete, 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 and I just run right through and just keep deleting them. I found this to be a very joyful activity. But in order, again, to delete the folders, you have to go back into the recycle bin and delete the stuff in the recycle bin to free up the ability to delete the folders. So that's deleting reports. Just with folders, I found, there is no mass delete. I went one by one on the tabs. I looked at the intel and the export. I looked in the folders. I deleted, and then would often immediately go to the recycle bin and delete the contents of the folder so that I could go delete the actual folder. Another trick that I used because of just sort of the step-by-step nature, I got into the habit of renaming the folders ZZZ space delete. And I had about over 20 ZZZ space delete folders, and then went back and deleted them after I'd emptied the recycle bin. So I don't know if there's any mass delete option for folders. I didn't find one, but the screenshot on the right is on that tab in my organized worksheet, and you can see the types of folders. Also, it has ones that we wouldn't keep, that are just not part of this exercise. So I deleted those from my worksheet and then went through each of the folders. Kimberly asked the question, is there a way to reparent folders? I don't think so. I think it's a manual thing, although, I'd be curious to try. I just don't know that we can make updates through the data loader or the Workbench. There is a column that's exposed. If we look into our folder here, there is a parent ID. So when I go into my folders, because of Lightning, there's this column here called parent ID, and this must be a nested folder that has a parent, but I don't know that we can use the data loader or the Workbench to update those. I just need to go into the data loader, try to do an update and see if it lets us update that. So I think it's one by one. You know, why don't we, since we're right here, I've got the data loader open. Let's say I go to update and show all Salesforce objects. It'll probably not show. Interesting. So Kimberly, I'm curious to try this because it is showing, whereas with, let's say, delete, it wouldn't show dashboards or reports. Just curious if this, so it doesn't show dashboard, but it does show folders. So maybe you can reparent this way. Be interesting if you circle back and let us know, Kimberly. All right. So deleting folders, you know, I'd go through and delete the stuff in the folders and then try to go delete the folder, and I'd get this error. And this is where you'd have to circle back to the recycle bin, because even though I deleted the things in the folder, they're not really deleted until you purge the recycle bin. So that slowed me down a little bit. So when I went into the recycle bin, I checked the item, check the boxes next to those items, click the delete button, and then they'd be gone. And then I can finally go back and actually delete the actual folder. All right, so one thing I thought to mention, that another aspect of this project was moving things across folders. And Lightning gives us the ability to move one item at a time, folder to folder. That's slow. I did do it. But I thought to also share, there's sort of a cool thing that we can do in Classic. This is probably one of the last dying gasps of why I'd say, let's use Classic instead of Lightning, where you can still, it's not mass drag and drop. So this is a mistake. I shouldn't have left the word mass. It's one by one, but it's fast, that you can switch over to Classic and you can drag items from one folder and drop them into another folder. So that's not mass. I should have gotten rid of the word mass there, my bad. But it's one by one, you can drag them. And to me, that's faster than going to each report, clicking on the down arrow, clicking on move, you know, confirming that, going to the next one. So if you need to move things around, I found that another aspect of this project was actually consolidating folders. So let's actually talk like another aspect of this folder cleanup was consolidating stuff into fewer folders, and then also going through the sharing again. We had an awful lot of you know, people from years ago, stuff was shared with, and then new hires came on. I think somewhere in the recent years, somebody wisened up and started sharing with roles in the role hierarchy, and even roles and subordinates. And so it was a little bit more dynamic, but we had some folders that weren't shared with everybody that was on a particular team, so they couldn't see the stuff in the folders. So another aspect of the folder cleanup was sharing, and another aspect was sort of reparent, you know, moving things across folders. Another concept that came up in the folder cleanup was just the naming scheme. Should we have departmental folders? Should we use more common naming rather than willy-nilly naming? All right, so the last big phase of this cleanup was custom report types. There is no mass delete option for custom report types. You want to be very, very careful with deleting custom report types. And I'm kind of 50-50 on, yes, I'm a big boy, I can make this decision to delete this thing, versus maybe I should just relabel the old one and make it ZZZ, maybe even make it so that it's not deployed, so people, you know, non-admins can't see it. But custom report types are a really important part of your system. We had 127 in the Opfocus system. You know, basically, these are things you're going to end up going through one by one. You're going to look at it, the intel in that sheet that you create. What I found helpful with this is to export the report list again after deleting all the dashboards, you know, removing AppExchange apps, deleting dashboards, deleting reports, to actually pull the report list one more time. And then you can do a cross-reference. There is the API name. So if I just jump back into the, this is my get organized sheet, and there is a column, and I think it's all the way over to the right, if I remember correctly. Here it is here. It's the report type API name. So this corresponds to the report type name here. Now, these are custom report types there's also reports with standard report types, but if we can isolate the custom reports that are using custom report types and isolate the name, we could do a VLOOKUP and determine, are there any custom report types that are not in use? So it's a little bit of a mouthful. It may be easier to just relabel some than actually try to delete them, but that was a way to try to isolate them. You might look at the custom report types. There are ones that are in our system that are missing hundreds of custom fields. Just nobody updated them. The act of updating a custom report type is dragging a field one by one. It takes forever. So, I guess the short story here is I'm not as aggressive with deleting custom report types because you're much more likely to break stuff. You could always rename them ZZZ, put them into one category. That's sort of like, not a hidden category, but you just try to get people not to use them. You can also make them so that they're not deployed. So I did think to share from the Opfocus system, we had a custom report type called projects with or without status notes from 2012. Now that custom report type showed that it had 67 project fields on the report type. Well, on that object in the year 2020, this was probably 2020, there were 277 fields. So it was missing over 200 fields. It takes, until recently, to keep those up to date, you'd have to drag and drop one by one. You'd come in here and you'd edit click on the report type, go edit the layout, drag the fields one by one, which was extremely painful. But this is a problem that was rectified last year. Salesforce gave us the automatically add fields to the custom report types. But for any that are older than last year, they're suspect, right? They may be missing many, many fields. In our case, 200 fields. All right. So the last topic with this whole cleanup project is reviewing and updating permissions. You've heard me share before, if you've been to the dojo before, only 4 out of 30 report and dashboard permissions on a profile appear in the standard profile. Only 4 are set by default. So the other 26 are not set by default. You may, as part of cleaning up this, think about the groups of users, end users, managers, super users, etc., and then dole out the permissions. I did write a blog article on this a few years back. I'm sorry if you've heard me talk about this many times, but I'm kind of passionate about it because there are so many useful things that come with Lightning. So this is a thing that I think a lot of companies, when they move to Lightning, they skip this step, which is basically doling out the permissions. Quite a few of those remaining 26 are Lightning related. All right, so you might consider the groups of users in your organization and your needs. This is sort of a basic set that I came up with. You might create permission sets that assign out permissions to super users and managers, essentially on top of their profiles, giving them the ability to do more with reports and dashboards. All right, so what did I learn from this whole process? I learned a bunch of stuff. This process takes way longer than you'd think. The 80-20 rule applies here, that if you get 80% of the way, consider it a grand slam. The final 20 takes longer than the first 80%. It just takes a long time to track down those final bits. But you think of like cleaning up 80% of the tab is fantastic. So we talked about exporting lists and making backups. I would start by exporting the list of reports with that last run date, pristine, before other people go and look at stuff. I originally thought I would export a list of dashboard components, didn't bother with it at all. I did share about the idea of getting organized in a workbook. That was really helpful to me. I would be very careful with reports that support dashboards. This is probably the hardest thing. What I realized is even though a folder was ancient with a report in it, that report might have been used many times on different dashboards and not consolidated into a single report folder supporting a dashboard. So you want to be careful with reports supporting dashboards because those components, you just may end up with stuff that's broken. The mass delete report really made this possible to do such a big cleanup for Opfocus. And then I did a lot with the recycle bin as I was working through. And then the other tip, and you can see here that the screenshot on the right, and I think Kyle, you've got this to throw into the chat, just sort of like how to write the formula. Now, in your case, it won't be opfocus.lightning.force.com. It'll be your org's API name or developer name, I think it's called. So I created a formula with hyperlink equals, and I put in the URL to Salesforce, and then concatenated the ID, and then put /view, comma. And the way the hyperlink works is the thing after the comma is the name that you're linking to. So that's what created in this screenshot here. Those IDs are really useful to just make it super quick for people to use my workbook and click on links and see things in the system. All right, so Victor asked the question, did you ever look at private reports? I was excited, Victor, with the data loader export, because I read somewhere that it shows you can see things through the API differently. It showed me my own private reports and private dashboards, just no one else's, which I thought was interesting. It lumped them in with all the public ones, my private ones. So I just left those alone. Those essentially clean up themselves. Natasha asked the question, is there a way to allow a non-admin to edit all dashboards? Yes. So what you could do is give the ability to, there's a couple things you can do. And I have in this, this blog article, and it's the bit.ly, so I think Kyle probably put it in the chat, it's just the bit.ly report permissions. What you'd want, Natasha, is you essentially want the super user permissions. And this is the report and dashboard super user list that I suggest. So these are all the permissions. You could essentially ask your admin to create a permission set that has this stuff. So you see here, manage dashboards in public folders. That's one that would allow you to do it. And then also the ability to edit your dashboards. That combination should give you the ability to edit everything. All right, great questions. All right, so as a quick recap, back everything up, get organized, clean stuff up, review results. Let's take a look at what we did here at Opfocus. So we started with 2,245 reports. We ended with 1,084. That was a 51% drop. Woohoo! We started with 119 folders on reports, ended up with 55. So we got rid of over half of those. We made the most progress, I think, with dashboards. I mean, we just had so many ancient ones, in a 14-year-old org. So we started with 79, we ended with 23. Most of those 23 are actually from AppExchange apps. Like a lot of growing companies, we have not one, but actually 2 BI tools that we use. And we're doing a lot of our reporting using outside of Salesforce reports and dashboards. So we were able to get rid of over 70% of our dashboards, also got rid of 2/3 of the folders on dashboards. So this really felt like a good outcome of the cleanup effort. So a couple of in-person events coming, or a couple of events coming up. There's Northeast Dreamin', the end of the month in Providence. If you've never been before, this is such a great event. I've been to a lot of the community events around the world, and I really like this one. It turns out I'll lead a hands-on reporting session, a hands-on dashboard session at this event, and I'm also really honored I'll give one of the keynotes at this event. So this is April 28th and 29th in Providence. Hope you guys can attend. And that's just northeastdreamin.com. Opfocus has a webinar next week on April 14th, maximizing your investment in Salesforce. You can find that at opfocus.com/events. Neil is our head of delivery, so our head of all consulting, super bright guy, really interesting, just as an interesting way of thinking about maximizing your investment in the system. I've got 2 classes coming up in June, so love to have you as part of my admin class or my 2-day hands-on report and dashboard workshop. And then we have more, did I do that again? I've done that more times.
My name is David.
I keep clicking on that image. We did throw out a survey. If you have any feedback for us for the Dashboard Dojo, we've gotten some great ideas with the survey so far. I think Kyle can throw the survey link into. Thank you, Kyle, for doing that. Just a very simple survey with asking for feedback. The last thing is we've got upcoming sessions. So the next one will be on April 20th, Sales Cloud Reporting Part 2. We've got a Service Cloud Reporting Part 2. The recordings are on the site for the Part 1s. On May 25th, we'll do dashboard makeovers. And then I thought to start having guests and bringing some super bright people. Ezra is one of the brightest people I know, and I've known him since high school. So he was a data architect for Salesforce and just knows reporting really, really well. So he'll join us June 8th. I hope you can join us. If there are other questions that we didn't get to, we can take a look at that now. See if there are others that I missed in here. So Victor asked the question, did you recover any of the few dynamic dashboards? You know, it's funny. I haven't looked yet. So I did have that on my mind, Victor. So great question. And what I should do, that second export of reports that I did at the end of the report cleanup, within that, there's a column and I could just count those up. So I don't have that ready to share, but that would be the way to do it, is to run, after you do all your deletes, run the export of dashboards again using the data loader perhaps, and you can see that column of is it dynamic or not. All right. So Tushar said, not able to copy paste from chat. Am I doing something wrong? I think we have the ability to download from the chat. I think you can use the three buttons, the ellipsis at the bottom, and maybe save the chat. So that might help you, Tushar. I'm just looking for other questions here. Is there a way to reparent? Okay, we answered that one. Answered that one. I think we got many of them. Sorry if we missed any of yours. It was great seeing all of you, and good luck. I can't wait to hear your feedback on cleaning up your report and dashboard tabs. Kyle, thank you so much for organizing the event today.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you, everyone.